danger is real, fear is not. And so when we talk about fear, it's failure, it's false evidence appearing real, right? We know that's what fear really boils down to. It's false evidence. If you're walking in a field and you see a lion coming toward you, is that real or false? That's the real thing. But if you're in a field and someone has told you a lion, or there are lions in this field, how much more fear might you have when someone tells you about that versus when you actually see it? Which one do you think is going to be greater? The anticipation that there's a lion just around the corner? Because you conjure up sort of this, there might be 2 lions out there, right? When you actually see it, that's the real thing, and you're going to run. But sometimes people run before they even get to the tall grass, right? Yeah. Fear doesn't prevent death, it prevents life. Yeah. So that word fear, and that's a pretty common term to use when there's a change about to happen. When you're going to be upsetting the apple cart. When you're not quite sure what's just on the horizon. When there's a lot of uncertainty of what's going to happen if you make that change. And there are tons of other variables. It might be moving to another job that pays less, but the rewards are greater. So it depends on what the bottom line is for you. If money is the driving force and money really is a factor, then you have to take that into strong consideration. But you're the only person that can answer those questions. If you're working with a supervisor that inhibits you or doesn't support you in coming in pursuing ideas that you have for the program that you're working with, but you love your clients and you're on the right bus, but your supervisor is inhibiting you to growth, where does that take you? What does it make you feel like? Because you don't know what's going to be on the other side. Maybe you come to another supervisor that doesn't give you that opportunity either. That's where the risk comes in, right? That's where the chances have to come into play. So is change a threat or an opportunity? And that's the big question too. Is change a threat or an opportunity? Sometimes change is because you've lost your job. You don't have a choice but to move on to another place. And sometimes that's the greatest thing. I remember when I was, before I came to Longwood, I was working at Texas A&M for the student union in student affairs. And I had applied for a full-time job running the outdoor program at Texas A&M. And it was between me and another person who I happened to know who had applied for this job. She got it, I did not. I was shocked. What? She got the job? I didn't get it? What? I couldn't believe it. But had I gotten that job, I would not have spent the next 30 years of my life at Longwood University. So at the time, I was really, really devastated because that was my vision at the time. I had to adjust my lens and adjust my vision and just where I saw myself going in order for me to be open to the change of coming here. So that was a good thing. So change was great. It was an opportunity. So let's look at 3 laws of growth. We'll look at these. Law of intentionality, the law of consistency, and the law of expansion. And I'm adding a bonus one, is the law of contribution. And when I think about, how many of you have been in your job for more than 5 years? Raise your hand if you've been in your job more than 5 years. Wow. How about more than 10 years? Wow. 15? 20? Wow. 25? Wow. Anybody with me? 30? Wow, that's amazing. I think we need to give them a big hand, don't you think? Yeah. You know, back in the day, when in my parents' generation, nobody moved from their jobs, right? They stayed in their jobs for 150 years. And they stayed in the same town, in the same house, in the same job, and it doesn't matter if they liked it or didn't, they just had to stay there. But we're such a mobile society anymore. So it's a rarity for people to stay in their jobs for more than maybe 10 years. And people talk about every 7 years you're going to change your job, because statistics says you're going to change your job every 7 years. Well, you don't have to. There's enough out there. It's a matter of thinking about these laws of intentionality, of reinventing yourself over and over again. But it requires all those other variables in your workplace in order for those to occur. Supportive environment. A supervisor says, whatever you want. Let's just do this thing. Ideas. Your clients give you support. Your administration gives you support. You're an idea generator. So let's look at the law of intentionality. You have to have intention, direct intention to move forward. So when you think about growth versus goals, how many of you have to write goals every year for your organization that your supervisor requires you to do or asks you to do? You can think about it in two different ways. Goals can be check boxes. Right? You can just check about, I did that, I did that, I did that, and then you move on to the next year, next set of goals, 5 goals. Ding, 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 ding. Yeah. But there's two ways you can look at it. Are they boxes to check off, or are they opportunities for growth? You see the difference? So are they allowing you to accomplish something? Are they little goals that get you to that star, whatever that star is in your own mind? And it can be a star far off into the future. Some people say, I just want to be happy for the rest of my life. Well, that's hard to define that in a star, but it has to be a little bit something that's not as, it needs to be more concrete of what your star might look like, other than just this nebulous term called happiness, right? So growth versus goals. So think about your goals, and I would venture to say the next time you write goals, think about how is it a checkbox to make your supervisor happy, or because this is what you do every year and these seem to be pretty simplified goals, or are they opportunities for accomplishing something? What am I accomplishing by writing this goal down? Is it bigger than the goal? What's the accomplishment? What's the value that I'm bringing to the table? What's the bigger picture that I'm getting at here when I'm developing these goals? Are they well thought out in your goals? So that's the intention. If your star is to create this new private practice, then when you're talking about these goals, are those goals related to that star? Or they're just related to the things you have to do for your work? Is it narrowly focused, or is it broader to get you in steps toward that star? Whatever that star is for you. Law of intentionality. Law of consistency. How many of you like consistency? How many of you are consistent? How many of you like it when other people are consistent? Why is that? Well, you like consistency because you know what you get, right? There's no surprises along the way. So when you think about consistency, if you've got that star out there and continually think about whatever that star is, from year to year, if you really want that star, consistency really comes into play and can be really valuable. Someone said motivation is really valuable. So match your motivation to your personality type. What motivates me in my job, in my growth, in my star is going to be different than what motivates you. Everybody in here is an individual. So your motivations and what drives you and what inspires you and what your definition of growth is going to be so very different. So think about your own personality style in relationship to your motivations. We are very good at comparing ourselves to other people. So when we begin to compare ourselves to other people, we get ourselves into trouble because it's not us. Man, I can't believe Sally, she started her business And here I am still stuck in this job, the same job that I've had for 10 years or whatever that might be. It's not about Sally, it's about you. So it's a matter of matching what it is that drives you and inspires you to move closer to that star. You have to get up in the morning. And I'm using this as a cliche. You have to have some determination. Sarah, I think you talked about determination. You got to have some determination. You've got to have some discipline. I'm an outdoor girl. I had an instructor back in the day when I first started in this business of outdoor education. He would say, in order to be a leader, you have to get up in the morning. You have to get up in the morning. So he's talking about it in relationship to sleeping in a tent. So if I'm still, as a leader, sleeping in my tent at 10 o'clock in the morning, and my group members are up, they've got a meal cooked, they've got their bags packed, they've got everything packed up and they're ready to go, and they're chomping at the bit waiting for their instructor to get up. That's not a very good example of leadership. But it's applicable to here. Even if you're not a morning person, the cliche is you got to get up in the morning. You have to be able to get up in the morning and say, this is the day that I'm going to make a difference. This is the day that I'm going to bring value to other people. It's, again, changing that narrative so that you become determined and you become disciplined in the direction you want to get to in order to get to that star. Yeah? Focus on today and set immediate goals. So again, those immediate goals are things that are like baby steps that get you to that star, to that major accomplishment that you're seeking. And sometimes you have to wait to appreciate the process. And we've heard all the time that patience is a virtue, right? And it is a virtue, but for some of us it's challenging. And if you're like me, I get impatient. I want things to happen now or yesterday. And I get impatient. But you realize what's most important, we hear it all the time, the journey is more important than the destination. It's kind of true. It really is pretty true. So appreciate those immediate goals that get you closer to that step. And you might even find, even if your star is out this way, you might find a little avenue this way, this way, this way, but eventually it brings you back there if your intentions are strong and good.